I call Carmel Cipollone.
Mr Speaker, following on from the two former speakers, this bill follows a claim filed with the Employment Relations Authority in August 2013. The claim asserted that the time that home and community support employees spend travelling between clients is work for the purposes of the Minimum Wage Act 1983. Because of the claim, Mr Speaker, the Ministry of Health entered negotiations with district health boards, providers of home and community-based care and support, and certain unions on behalf of members and non-members. And the result, Mr Speaker, is a good one. It is the settlement. Labor is pleased to see the settlement of this case finally brought before the House after the Human Rights Commission ruling travel time should be remunerated several years ago. National has reluctantly bowed to pressure from unions and adopted Labor's fair and sensible policy to pay home support workers for the time they spend travelling between clients. It is great that we're in the position whereby this House in its entirety is supporting this bill. It is just unfortunate that National dragged their feet on the way to doing this. We have to give credit, Mr Speaker, to Jenny Goodman and the PSA, who bravely took a test case claim on behalf of hundreds of fellow home care workers. Even with this progress, Mr Speaker, this settlement is still a long way from dealing with the historic underpayment of home and community support workers. Many of these people are on wages close to the minimum wage, or on the minimum wage actually, and given the work they do, deserve to be on a pay grade similar to nurses. And my colleague Annette King made the point around pay equity. Why is it that this valuable form of work in terms of home care support is undervalued when you stack it up against other professions? And this is an area that needs to be looked at, Mr Speaker, in terms of pay equity. We know that the vast majority of people undertaking this work are in fact women. It is a highly feminised workforce, Mr Speaker, and these women deserve to be paid for the value of the work that they're doing. The wider funding of the home support services also needs to be addressed, as home support remains the only service not planned and funded on a national basis. The lack of funding, Mr Speaker, does push down wages in the sector. The lack of funding also means, as the Home and Community Health Association has stated, that, quote, home and community support will increasingly become an option only for those who can afford it, end quote. And many people in the last year have found their home support levels cut. And this should be a growing concern of concern for all of us, Mr Speaker, given that we have an ageing population and that many more people moving forward are going to be requiring this type of care. If we can't adequately fund it now, then what position are we as a country going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time? Mr Speaker, what is unfortunate is that the reality is the government has cut $1.7 billion out of the health system over 6 years, and the workforce is bearing the brunt of this gross underfunding, stretched to capacity. Stretched to capacity, Mr Speaker, and we are putting our workers in this workforce into dangerous situations because of that. Mr Speaker, there are still issues with the settlement. New organisations who join up will not be covered by this deal, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed, Mr Speaker. I think it's important to note that the bill does not cover Part B of the settlement agreement, which was the establishment of a regularised workforce and review of the home and community health sector. And I can say, having been the research manager of a Pacific non-regulated health workforce development research project in the past, that conversation around the regularisation of the workforce was something that was being had, I think, maybe 8 years ago, and continues now. What we need, Mr Speaker, is not only that the workers in this workforce be paid adequately for the valuable work that they do, but also that safeguards be in place to ensure that they are protected. Home and community support employees will receive payment from the 1st of July 2015 for time spent travelling between clients, Mr Speaker, and I just want to note too that from 1st of July 2015 to the 29th of February 2016, the payment will be calculated using a figure that represents the minimum wage for the weighted average of the time spent travelling between clients. Also, Mr Speaker, I want to note that from 1st of March 2016, the payment will be calculated based on the employee's qualifying travel time, being the weighted average time per client visit assigned to the travel band applicable to the client's location, and this will be prescribed in regulation. I just want to go back to what was discussed earlier about the value of this workforce, and just again, because I don't think we can say it enough, that this workforce historically has been undervalued, and some attention needs to be paid to how we do value this workforce better. Remuneration is definitely one part of that, but it's not the only part of that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to point out that when we were undertaking the research on the Pacific non-regulated health workforce, that one of the things that came up time and time again was that these women who were undertaking this type of work were doing so because of the fact that they had a heart for the clients and the people that they were working for. It wasn't just a matter of undertaking a job for the sake of undertaking a job, Mr. Speaker. There was actually that passion and commitment to the work that they were undertaking and the care that they were giving to the clients that they were looking after. So I want to acknowledge the fact that this is a dedicated workforce, Mr. Speaker, and so that's another reason why we need to place value on this. We need home carers, and actually during that time when we were undertaking that study, that was one of the concerns moving forward, whether or not we would have the appropriate workforce to be able to cater to the needs of our ageing population. So it's not just about valuing them, it's also looking to the future and seeing how can we encourage more people to take up this type of work. And as I said, remuneration is a part of it, but all of the working conditions that they have to endure or that they are exposed to are a big part of making sure that they actually want to continue working in that workforce, or that we can attract more people to working in that workforce, Mr. Speaker. As we said before, it is a highly feminised workforce and really does illustrate the issues with pay equity that we have in this country. So, I mean, if there's any workforce that we should be concerned about in terms of pay equity, it really is in the health sector, and it really is the unregulated workforce, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we are, as I said earlier, pleased to see that the settlement of this case has finally been brought before the House after the Human Rights Commission ruling travel time should be remunerated several years ago. It's just so unfortunate that it has taken so long for us to get to this point. And I want to, again, give credit to Jenny Goodman and the PSA, who have bravely taken a test case claim on behalf of hundreds of fellow home care workers, and just reiterate something that Annette King said earlier, and that is that the unions, this demonstrates really the importance of having a unionised workforce, being involved in a union, being a member of a union, because actually for an individual to be expected to take up a case like this alone would be overwhelming for anyone, but to know that you have a union, you have support behind you to be able to do that makes it a lot easier, and actually brings us to the point where we can have successful results like we do here today. So, Mr. Speaker, Labor is definitely supporting this bill, and can I just acknowledge each and every person that has played a role in bringing this to the House and ensuring its success, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.